All right, welcome to the Intro to the Divided Kingdom / Prophets PowerPoint presentation. The very first thing you should do is pause this video, go to the calendar on Edline, and print the updated incomplete notes. You'll notice that they're updated because at the top they say New and Improved 1314. The last page is the same, so if you already started your questions in class, you can use that, what you've already started, but the first page, front and back, is different. And this PowerPoint will be very confusing if you use the one I gave you in class. So, take a moment now, pause this video, print those updated, incomplete notes, or if you're really awesome, you can maybe just upload them on your electronic device, and then you can start this video from there. Okay, I'm assuming you have the updated incomplete notes, so we will begin. Historical background. When Solomon's son Rehoboam took the throne, most of Israel was not happy with him as king because of the continuation of his father Solomon's forced labor and taxation. Remember those rights of the king. Jeroboam was a servant of Solomon who fled from Israel rather than be the head of Solomon's forced labor. Rehoboam was Solomon's son and heir to the throne of his father. The people ask Rehoboam to lighten up, but he decides to be even harder on his people than his father had been, due to some bad advice from his friends. This is going to set up the background for the divided monarchy. And so we complete the advice journal. In the journal section of your notebook or binder or electronic device, please write advice journal, title, and date it, and answer, have you ever received conflicting advice from adults and your peers? Who did you listen to, the adults or your peers? What was the result? These questions are also on your handout. Pause the video now to answer this journal. Welcome back. Now that you've completed your journal, we're going to take a look at the chart on your incomplete outline. If your last name starts with A through J, you're going to read 1 Kings chapter 12, verses 12 to 33, and fill in the chart for the north. If your last name begins with K through Z, you're going to read that same section but fill in the chart for the south. All of you will read 1 Kings chapter 13, verses 33 and 34, and 1 Kings chapter 16, verses 29 to 34, and answer the 4 questions below the chart. Take a moment to pause the video, read those sections, and fill them in now. Welcome back. So far, I hope you're enjoying this more interactive version of me not just talking at you, but you getting to do things. And when we come back together on Monday, we're going to have some fun going over this chart. So be prepared to defend, especially why you think your side is justified and the other side is not. And just for fun, here's a quick hint about some of the answers in case it was really hard. But because it's a hint, it has to be quick. All right, back to our handout. The consequences of this split between the north and the south. The civil war between Israel in the north and Judah in the south makes both of them susceptible to outside threats. Both Israel and Judah had some good kings and some corrupt kings. But due to all this corruption, God sends the prophets. Please turn the page. on the back side of your new and improved incomplete outline. This is going to be a good sign of whether or not you have the right notes, because here's where things start to change. What does the word prophet mean? Well, it could be defined as one who announces God's plan, or one who is called by God. It's basically someone who is going to speak the word of God to the people of God for the sole purpose of bringing them back to God. The prophets see patterns in the history of their people. When the people respond to God's call through the prophets, they lived and prospered. But when they ignored God's call through the prophets, they died and were defeated. The cycle of prophetic insight explains how the prophet sees the world. The prophet is aware of the past, applies the past lessons to the present situation, and then knows and warns about the consequences of the future for the actions of today based on their knowledge of the past. For example, if a prophet comes to the Israelites and says, "Hey, Israelites, in the past, we committed idolatry. In the present, we're committing idolatry again. In the past, when we committed idolatry, we were punished. So we can predict that if we continue to commit idolatry in the present, we'll probably be punished in the future." So it's a cycle. Furthermore, the prophets are countercultural, meaning they go against the dominant culture. Their job is to show a different perspective than whatever the dominant one is of the time, because that dominant perspective is going against God's teaching. So the prophets are showing that what's popular is not always right, and what's right is not always popular. And they're calling the people back to God. Now, they do this with style. The style of the message of the prophets is passionate, imaginative, and enigmatic, or PI if you're memorizing. It's passionate. It means they've got a lot of enthusiasm for what they're talking about. They get people excited simply by their own energy. They're imaginative. They're extremely creative. They do some very creative and very different sorts of things to get people's attention. Finally, they're enigmatic, meaning they don't just tell us everything straight up really easy to understand. Things are a little bit uncertain, a little bit mysterious. You have to do a little interpreting and a little thinking below the surface to try and get the meaning of their messages. Why and how do they use such a style? Well, they want to get attention. They want to shock and shake us out of numbness to feel, even if it hurts, and to be motivated to change. It's the difference of saying, "Hey guys, what's up?" and "Hey guys, what's up?" They want to get attention. And how do they do this? Well, they use symbolic words and actions. They use passionate sermons, and they also use creative images. Go ahead and add that in, even though it's not on the slide. Symbolic words and actions, passionate sermons, and creative images. What is the prophet's main message? To help Israel follow the covenant, which involves the preferential option for the poor. Now, if we break these words down, preferential means there's more than one choice and you like one more than the other, like I prefer chocolate ice cream to vanilla ice cream. Option implies that there's more than one choice. For the poor tells us the choice that is being made out of preference. Now, this involves a little bit of explanation. God chooses to focus on the poor because they are the most vulnerable. It's like triage. That's when you go to the hospital and the nurses and doctors decide who is the most vulnerable, who is the most injured that needs help immediately. So if somebody comes in who's having a heart attack, somebody comes in who has a broken arm, and somebody comes in who has a splinter, they're going to help the person with the heart attack first because they might die if they're neglected. Then they'd go for the person who has the broken arm because they're in great pain and need some help, but not as immediate as the heart attack. Finally, they're going to help the person with the splinter, but it's going to take them a while to get there because the person with the splinter isn't the one in the most need. So the preferential option for the poor says we need to help where the need is greatest, where people are most vulnerable. It does not mean God hates the rich. Okay, very important to understand that. We are called to follow this as well. And this slide's already on the paper, so you get to just listen. To follow the preferential option for the poor involves some sort of sacrifice for the greater good, but it often brings great reward as well. This is what Jesus did, and thus if we want to follow Jesus, we are called to do this as well. The prophets point out that faithfulness to the covenant involves caring for the poor and the weak, or as I often point out, the widows and the orphans, the people who are in most need. Again, remember, preferential option for the poor means helping those who are most vulnerable or most in need. It doesn't mean we don't help anyone else. It just means we start where the need is greatest. And so, how can we follow the preferential option for the poor today? I'd like you to try and think of 2 ideas of how we can realistically do this. You're a freshman at St. Xavier High School. What are 2 ways that you can work to help those who are most in need? And remember, poor doesn't just mean financially. It's anyone who you would consider to be the most vulnerable, the most in need, the person having the heart attack in our example. Once you've written down those 2 ideas, you can move on to the questions on the next page. Those can be found on page 860 in the new version of the Bible, or on the Edline calendar. I've uploaded that for those of you who have the old version. At this point, you won't need the PowerPoint anymore. You can complete that last page on your own. But go ahead and put a smiley face next to your name in order to get some bonus points for listening all the way to the end of the video. Thank you again for paying attention, for sticking with me. And if you have any questions, make sure you write them down so you can ask me on Monday, when I'll expect you to come in with all of the blanks filled in on your incomplete outline and with all of the questions answered on your Intro to the Prophetic Books question sheet. You should also have filled in the 2 ways that you can follow the preferential option for the poor, the chart, just whatever one side you were assigned, and the 4 questions on the first page, and the advice journal in your 3rd corner journal section. Thanks again, and have a great day.